Okay, thanks everyone for joining us here today. I think we're all working in unprecedented times, and I guess with clarity on what the future holds being very cloudy, we thought that we would start to look at the possibilities of how and where our food supplies may come from, and how, as the distributors, we collect that food and get it to the market, into our high streets, local communities and the public sectors that we are supplying, and how actually we are part of that solution in reducing the carbon impacts of both the food production, its distribution and its waste. SWA already leads for the food and drink industry in decarbonising our fleets, with many involved in testing and trialling HGVs and zero emission HGVs and cars, and where hopefully by the end of next week we'll have a consortium bid sent into the Innovate UK fund, whereby we hope to get 25 44-ton HGV zero emission vehicles on the road within the next 2 years. But we'll let members know more about that as things progress. So from greening our wheels today, we hear from industry experts on how Scotland is leading the way in creating a more sustainable food solution, with IGS talking about their vertical farms and giving examples of where they're being used, through to FruPro, a new app created to bring producer, suppliers and buyers closer together, helping reduce the food miles and also its waste. And then we hear from FareShare, with whom we've worked with during the pandemic to avoid food waste going to landfill, and where there's much more that our members and our sector can be doing to redistribute the food that would otherwise be going to waste. But before we hear from them, I'd like to introduce the first of our speakers, Professor Derek Stewart from the James Hutton Institute. So Derek, I will pass over to you.
Okay, right, I'll just share my screen. If all hell breaks loose behind me, it's our fire alarm going off that tests at 11, so I've got a good hard stop there. Right now, where are we? Right, you seeing everything okay now? Right.
Yep. Looking good.
Cool, that's fine. Right, so I'm going to talk about the current food supply system, problems around it, and then a wee bit about vertical farming, but allow Gina to then talk about their system, because their system can represent multiple different systems. It's an area. Right, so producing food, we work in an area where we're seeing all the problems. So top left is foods. As we go forward, population increases, the demand on food is going to increase, and allied with that, there's a need for fresh water, energy and land. Globally, we've trashed the land, so how the hell are we going to feed people? And so there's a big problem there. So that's a kind of big driver for us and many other companies and researchers in the area. This is kind of teaching your grandmother to suck eggs, because you guys will know this heavily. Certainly the food system's attributable for 20 to 40% of global emissions. That's data from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. We've seen huge energy price increases and are still feeling that pain significantly. And that's impacting across hugely across all sectors, but particularly in the food and drink sector. Then you've got Brexit that's buggered up both exports and imports, to put it bluntly. The numbers are there. The numbers kind of change, but they're painful reading. And then you've got the Ukraine war that's causing real problems to major food items coming in. And a good, to bring it back to home, is the UK food exports are providing calories to feed almost 500 million people. That's some serious stuff happening all there. So I talked earlier to some of you about catastrophizing the food supply chain. That's it writ large right there. And so how do you cope with that and still be sustainable? So an element of this is also, and it's thrown about a lot, and I think we might hear about it today from the Tory conference, because they're talking about food today as well, is food security. So here's the food security over time. Clearly before mechanisation, we were pretty food secure. And then as we started to make lots of the map pink, we became less food secure and basically just imported loads of stuff up until about late Victorian times, early would be Edwardian times, I think. We were importing loads. And then after the Second World War, we ramped up again and had a boost kind of in the 80s. But we're in sharp decline, so food security is going down. And I think the recent scares have actually looked to see how can we actually produce much more of our own food, but not necessarily, well, for import-export substitution, the security aspect in case there are other catastrophes coming along. But I don't think we'll never go to 100%. That doesn't make global sense. So what are we doing in Scotland? Well, if you look at the latest figures we've got coming in from Scottish Agricultural Statistics, the total income from farming, if you actually look at the bit involved specifically with food and crops and animals, 2.2 billion. If you actually break that down, and if we're concentrating now on things like vertical farming, the associated bits from fruit and vegetable processing, 20 million is not large. So what that identifies is there's huge levels of importation going on there. If we then look at the statistics and look at the data sources for the UK, getting real data for this for Scotland is incredibly hard. And actually, you just have to consider the union as one, to be honest. So this one's more if you just take a step back and look at the collated numbers on the UK imports for food, feed and drink for 2020 compared to what our exports are, you can see it's more, there's a lot more coming in than there is going out. Okay, so the impacts there are significant. We'll get to sustainability and the impacts of that coming up. And probably a more appealing one for sort of the vertical farming pieces, if you look at the fruit and veg importations to the UK, and this is bringing sustainability in a bit by value and also by water risk then impacts on sustainability, because some of these countries ultimately, as climate change comes in, will stop importing because what they're doing is basically selling water off from the country and they'll no longer be able to afford to do that or to grow the stuff. So Spain's one of the problems. USA for certain areas in fruit and veg is really problematic. California is the big thing there. Some of the other countries not so bad, but they've got other problems like agricultural practices. So you can see for a large sweep of much of that, theoretically we can grow that under controlled environment in the UK. So if I was in a following wind and I was feeling particularly chirpy, I reckon we can do 40 to 50% of that in the UK. I think we've got the tech now to do that. The other bit, again, sustainability all comes back to environmental management. So this is a busy slide, but I'll send it over the PDF and people can look at it at their leisure. If you look at the impacts on land and on water and on this sort of assessment that was being done, the higher number, the better you are. So anything we're importing from countries that are in the bottom left quadrant, so India, Egypt, I mean, we get a lot of tatties from Egypt over time, certainly in some periods. China and so on, South Africa and Romania, they're going to be really problematic. So they're going to change they're going to have to change their process, or your scope 3, and we'll come to that in a minute, will be huge importing from these places. So this is kind of interesting. I did one of these word clouds from the internet looking at what does sustainability mean to people? Can anybody find food in that word cloud? Because I've done this loads of times and it just doesn't feature. So sustainability with food, people may talk about it, but actually sustainability, there's lots to do with climate change, energy, emissions, things like that, but people are not necessarily linking it particularly well to their daily life. And they're going to come up hard against this, because if we're going to have to pay for sustainability, it's going to knock on in terms of cost. So playing around with this, we looked at, certainly, I tend to work probably about 60% with the primary production end and looking at factors impacting on sustainability. Basically, it's inputs, outputs, demand, trade, politics, increasingly, cost. And as you go up the chain or across it, what factors people see as impacting, they think, on sustainability. Some of them are common. I mean, waste is common basically all the way through. Policy will be an interesting piece going forward. But again, if you're assessing sustainability, one man's problem is no longer just his, it will be yours, because how we assess emissions. And again, it's getting to this type of thing, and this is where the nightmare, the hair pulling, the tears at bedtime start to come in. Most people could probably calculate their own scope 1 emissions, but it's the scope 3 that's the killer. And this huge importation piece is going to be a nightmare for that going forward. So this is actually, I would say, a hidden driver for things like vertical farming. So where have we come from and where are we going to? So this was a talk I gave to the horticulture industry a wee while ago. So we kind of started off, if we think about the Victorian times, the evolution of the glasshouse. We started to get water and steam power mechanisation, and then that sort of geared up to the Second World War. And it's only recently we've started to really see computer and automation come in. It's probably not even in a lot of the glasshouses you're seeing at the moment across the UK. But I think what will happen is we will see the jump to vertical farming coming in hand with more glasshouses, because people will see, they want to see vertical farming bedded in and see it tested to destruction is probably the best way, and to see how it survives and see how it delivers compared to glasshouses, because people trust glasshouses, but I think they're not quite sure about vertical farming yet. Those that have seen it and have tried it are converts. And I think what we'll start to see is an evolution of glasshouse diminishment and an increase in vertical farming going forward. So there's multiple different ways you can skin this cat. So on site, we've got the IGS system, which is right at the bottom in the middle. We've also have Liberty Produce, which is a different kind of model, which is much more less a big system, more a refit system into different shapes and buildings and what have you. But there's every variation you could think of under the sun for vertical farming. And certainly in some aspects of the States, we've seen the containerized systems being dropped in. We're doing some work, actually the Hutton's doing some work actually looking at disaster relief in terms of that kind of approach. But as Gina will tell you, they're all kind of the same system. It's just how you form that system around. Now, the key point to sustainability is we've done a lot of work on, recently funded by the Scottish Government. And we found, to cut to the chase, that if you fuel the conventional vertical farm through fossil fuel systems, it's not sustainable per unit crop. If you power it through renewable energy systems, night and day. It's the best system you can get. So we kind of think Scotland's what, 96% renewables at the moment, with the wind and hydrogen systems coming on. Scotland potentially could be a hotbed of fresh produce and crop and food production. And we can really flip that import-export problem all the way around. Some numbers, I'm not sure if Gina was going to use these or not, but they're worth reinforcing even if she is. If you compare open field, glasshouse and vertical farm, the amount of water they use goes from 250 litres per kilogram of lettuce, this is lettuce as a comparator, to 1 litre in vertical farm. So essentially in vertical farm, the only water really leaving the system is in the plant, which is a key point. Now, might not be much of a problem in Scotland, but actually if you're putting that system down in Kent, that's a big problem. And that they can really be interested in that. And again, crop yields, what are you getting per metre squared per year? 30 to 40 times what you get in open field. I think if you really wanted to push the system, you can maybe squeeze that up to 50, depending on what crop you're producing. And of course, because of the vertical farm, where you would put it, you probably put it next to your energy sources or where it's needed, your food miles just fall through the floor. Food miles is becoming out of fashion, but actually, this might be better versed as Scope 3 emissions. And I think we may want to rework it based on that. So it's kind of tick, tick, tick all the way along here. So who's interested? Well, I've chatted to several of the biggies, Mondelez, Unilever, PepsiCo, kind of chatting to Coca-Cola and Danone as well. So, and of course from them, they've got then all these other sub-companies that control the food world, for want of a better word. Heinz is another one that really interested in vertical farming. Their interest really is more to do with consistency of product, but once they figure out that they up productivity, and if they connect it to energy, really deliver the sustainability bang for buck as well, they're really becoming interested. So everyone's going down the ESG agenda and they're starting to get that. So to finish off, we really see there's climate change is the biggie that's rolling in that slowly that people are not really aware of it, but sustainability measures to get to net zero will be need to be addressed. And you guys are completely within that part 1 and 2, stage 1 and 2 of this. But if we've got vertical farming in that, we can help deliver and reduce emissions all the way through. And that's all from me. I wanted to keep it quite light. Kind of doom at the start, but happiness at the end, perhaps. Thanks.
Thanks, Derek. Truly fascinating. I think what we'll do, if anyone does have questions, let's hold them at this point until we hear from Gina, who actually will talk about the actual vertical farm and what it does. So Gina, if I can pass over to yourself.
Super, thanks. I'm just trying to get my presentation up. Sorry, I know we had a demo on this, but it's disappeared. It
always happens.
It always happens. I was like, where is it? It's gone. Okay, great. Hopefully everyone can see that now.
Yep, that's great.
Super. Okay, great. So my name's Gina. I'm a European account manager at Intelligent Growth Solutions. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview about vertical farming and our system in particular. So a little bit about IGS. We were founded in 2013 by a real farmer, and that's something that we're really proud of, being part of our roots. So a farmer based in Aberdeen who was growing crops for high-end Michelin star restaurants. He needed to find all year round quality produce. And that's really where he started looking into how he could get into vertical farming, and he joined forces with our CTO, Dave Scott, who's a mechanical electrical engineer. They spent millions of pounds on R&D developing this technology that now has 22 patents in 4 different families, so covering the HVAC, the power consumption, the lighting, a whole host of different areas that really make this technology unique and Scottish born and bred. What we offer to the market is a fully productized solution. So we really believe that vertical farming needs to be standardized so that you're not doing bespoke products for each customer. This means that you can support it throughout the lifetime with our customer support services. And we're also able to get the best results through all the R&D testing that we've done. So our system comes in 6 meters, 9 meters or 12 meters in height. Since our initial start in 2013 of doing a lot of R&D work, we've since moved on to raise 55 million in venture capital. So you can see just on the right of your screens there, some of our investors. And again, it's something we're really proud of, that they're really strong in the whole ag tech industry. So the likes of SWA Ventures, Ag Funder and Osprey really know their stuff when it comes to ag tech. So it's great for us that we have their backing and also access to their network. What we're offering is a total controlled environment agriculture. So the ideal environment for plants to thrive, which I'll cover in a bit more. And we've got customers growing across all 4 continents. So we have really ramped up over the last few years. Very similar to the things that Derek was covering, just the real need and emergency of food across the world. That's really heightened by politics, regulation, COVID and war. There's a statistic going around that we talk of often here, that in the next 30 years, we'll need to grow more food than we have in the last 10,000, which is really, really huge, and really why IGS exists as a technology provider to help play a part in that solution. A little bit more about the whole supply chain and movement, things not being grown locally, exporting. I think we can all agree it's a huge cost in carbon and in money and in time, included in terms of food freshness, which then leads on to waste. So all of these factors are really part of what IGS is about. We are the technology provider, and we are not ourselves a grower. We made this quite clear early on in the market that we didn't want to compete with others in the market, and also we wanted to make it an easier business strategy for us to be able to scale as a business by focusing on the technology, supporting that technology, continuing to innovate rather than trying to grow crops and develop and support the technology. So we will be supplying this technology. We are supplying this technology to people who want to grow to then supply into the market. This picture here is of our facility that's on James Hutton campus in Invergowrie. Beautiful sunny day there, which it seems to be quite frequently whenever I visit Invergowrie. But what you see here is a 9-meter structure that holds our 9-meter towers. You could fit 4 of them within this building. There's actually 3 in there. And these polytunnels are just used for R&D. I'm going to show you a video in a couple of minutes that just gives you a bit more of a view of what happens inside the towers. But what you can't see, and which is very important, as Derek was mentioning, is there's rainwater harvesting off the roof and a tank there that captures the rainwater, so we can reuse that. And although it might not seem like a big issue this time of the year, when we get into the summer months again and with changes in the climate, it becomes more and more important. And as we're looking to expand globally, again, very important for people to not be wasting rainwater or wasting water. A little bit about what vertical farming is in itself. This is a sort of simplistic view before it gets into more of the technology. But what we're really doing is taking a small footprint. So one of our growth towers is 41 meters squared, and you can have growing space of 13 times that in one of our 12-meter towers. So you take a field, you cut it up into 50 sections, all of 6 meters, stack it high, and then put it into an external structure. So the reason we have 6 meters, 9 meters, or 12 meters in height is just to allow for different customers, different planning permissions. You can do a retrofit where you're building the vertical farms within an existing building, just as long as the height is available, or we can work with local suppliers and designers who will build the outer structure, and we would then install the towers within there. Once inside the growth towers, it's creating the optimum condition for plants to grow, and that's all fully controlled by software which is hosted on the cloud. When we're talking about controlling this environment, it's really the sun, the wind, the rain. So in terms of sun, we have LED lights, and rather than broad spectrum white lights, IGS has in their system 4 different types of lights, so deep blue, true green, far red, and infrared. And this is for photon optimization, so that on each level, each GTL, growth tray with light that we call it, the lights can be tuned in to give the crops exactly what they need. You can grow different crops at different levels, also helping the flexibility of the system. And our system is really highly efficient with low voltage, so it's very good on power consumption, which is super important at this time. And then when we talk about wind, it's more about the ventilation. So we're constantly drawing in humid air, and we've got light, using the waste heat from the lights, and also injecting CO2 to help the plants. And then for rain, we have our system, it's about 95% closed loop. So 5%, maybe more, might go out in the plant, but everything else can be taken back, retreated, nutrients are added also, which you'll see in the video. So each growth tray with lights has 1,140 LEDs that can be tuned in with the software that runs the system to give the crops what they need. You can have different spacing within your growth trays with lights, and you could remove a tray if you wanted to grow taller crops. And just a little bit more about the spacing, 9, 6, or 12 meters. I'm going to try this video now. Maybe somebody could give me a thumbs up if you can hear it okay. Hoping for no more technical hitches. Can you hear? Great.
What does the future of agriculture look like? How do we continue to produce food at a scale that meets demand? And how can this align with our obligations to minimize environmental impact? We are facing important questions around food, energy, climate, and population growth. At IGS, we are pioneering solutions that are automated, scalable, and robust enough to further agricultural innovation. So, what does this future look like? We think it looks like this. Greater control and greater consistency, our towers yield more per square meter. Literally growing up, not out. Indoor growing is not a new concept, but the demand for precision farming continues to increase. It was from this demand that IGS was founded by a farmer and an engineer looking to diversify traditional thinking. The results are exciting. Controlled environment approach to deliver yield, quality and consistency. A tailored ecosystem for each growth tray. Crops grown hydroponically. Automated water and nutrient delivery. Clean room access and instant access through cloud-based software. Automation means exact recipes repeated across every growing cycle. At IGS's Crop Research Centre, better never stops. We continue to chart crops, develop recipes and challenge what our towers can deliver. This includes a range of brassicas, roots, soft fruits, leafy greens, herbs and botanicals. At IGS, we're answering important questions on the future of agriculture today. For more information on our scalable vertical farm technology, join us at intelligentgrowth.io.
So just before I move on, there is if anybody is interested in coming and visiting us at the Crop Research Centre, just next to the James Hutton, then please do get in touch with me. We'll be delighted to show you around in person. It really, when you're in the tower, it feels very different from just seeing a video. It really is quite remarkable. Just a little bit about the crops that we have growth recipes for in our software. We do a lot of research in the Crop Research Centre and can do seed to harvest on all of the leafy greens, herbs, crops that you would expect alongside violas and edible flowers. But we're also looking a lot more at what else the market needs. And that's really where it's useful getting input from groups like this as well, and understanding, you know, where are the gaps in the supply chain and how can we work with you to understand what growth recipes we need to add in to our system. So one area that we've been doing a lot of work on is on propagation plants, so strawberry runner plants, seed potatoes, broccoli, and also tree seedlings. So you may have seen there was an article in The Guardian over the weekend. I think the link should still be in the chat, about some work we've been doing with forestry and Land Scotland, which is really exciting, of the impact that vertical farming can have on reforestation and reducing carbon there as well. We're very much the sort of company that if people come to us with an idea of something that they're saying we need to grow, that's when our science team get together and look at how they can do it and draw in expertise from the likes of the James Hutton to really expand that further. And we see our solution as very much being integrated with traditional agriculture. So IGS doesn't want to be seen as a competitor to growing in the field or in greenhouses. It's more about how we can complement it to together tackle the food crisis that we're seeing. So growing these starter plants in a nursery that they can then be brought out into glass houses, having stronger starter plants. I think there's some real issues with strawberry starter plants in the UK that are coming over from the Netherlands, having diseases, and just the number of them actually going from them buying into being viable plants being less than 50%, I think. So there's a lot of wastage even within the supply chain that we can look to tackle. And yeah, we're also looking at growing lots of different types of crops, entering new markets, working with new customers, and having crops such as the chilies, which we've been growing for about 2 years in the vertical farm. If you come and visit and you're brave enough, you get to try some there, but they are continuously harvesting again, which is fantastic. And we're seeing our customers not only looking at the food produce, but also moving into how they can provide pharmaceutical or cosmetic industries too with these crops. IGS as a company is been very active. This is showing you the soil degradation and then locations where we are present. We have a North American office, obviously a European office, and Asia Pacific representation in the Middle East. And we are growing the number of customers that are deploying, that we expect to deploy in the next years as well. So for the UK, we're very proud of Vertigrow, who just recently completed their first commercial growth tower in Scotland. And also recently it's been announced about one farm who's opening a large scale vertical farm down in Suffolk. There's more in the pipeline in terms of deployments that I'm afraid I can't go into right now, but we have our customer Jungle in France, who's been operational for a number of years. We've local bounty in the USA and more coming on that whole area. So we're seeing real uptake globally, but there's always, you know, more that we think our solution can help to meet the growing demands. This is just a bit of a demo to show you, you know, you can start off with 2 towers, 4 towers, continue to expand due to the modularity of the system. And we're very much work in partnership with our customers. So many of them, including Jungle, had started with 4 towers. Then they decided, okay, their business was growing. They had strong off-taker agreements. And actually, I realize now, flashback to Colin telling me that that's not actually how we use the term off-taker. I think I'm misusing off-taker, which is even more why we need to engage with this group more. But, you know, the customers, the people that are looking, whether it's the wholesalers or the users of the produce, I think that's one of the key issues that we're seeing, a key stumbling block, aside from finance, that having those contracts where people know that what they grow, they can then sell into the market. In terms of who our customers are, they can be these new entrepreneur farmers who are interested in vertical farming, traditional farmers who maybe have land and want to expand their existing operations, existing indoor growers. So like we were talking about the nursery and how that works with greenhouses, or indeed forestry managers, which I mentioned. And these are all the markets they can supply into. But often, particularly for the new urban farmers, they are still may struggle to get into those markets. Linking in with wholesalers, I think, is definitely something I would like to learn more about and be able to connect some of our customers to the group here who are looking for produce. And again, that sort of whole area of what's missing, what needs to be grown that we could maybe work together on. And that's all from me. I think we were going to take some questions, will we? I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Gina. I mean, certainly, we've been up and seen the site. It really is worth a visit. It is fascinating to understand, you know, and see for yourself how the product, the produce is grown, and then a lot of the development stuff that you're working on behind the scenes. You know, it's not just about what can currently grow just now, but you know what you're looking at in the future, and different varieties, and creating new variants of you know, whatever it might be, lettuce or whatever. So yeah, well worth a visit. I guess if we open it to the floor, any questions for Gina and Derek? Sam, was that your hand there? It's all flashed up. Yeah.
Yeah, Derek and Gina, that was fantastic. Really, really fantastic to see the data and the information on water, but also what you're doing to do vertical farming. Something I've been interested for some time, but don't have any real knowledge on. The question I would have is, as a food wholesaler, maybe has a bit of space, would it be viable for a wholesaler like us to actually take a couple of these towers into our warehouse and grow the product and sell it basically out through our vans? Is that viable? If we had space inside the warehouse to put a couple of towers in, what skills would we need? Would we be able to, you know, bring people in to do it? Obviously, we're not farmers, and it's not a farming environment. But it sounds like you've created an environment where you've taken all the skill out of it, and it's potentially something we could do.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question, and it's definitely something I'd like to follow up with you on afterwards. We would, in terms of skills, you could either bring in an operator, so an external organization that will operate the vertical farm for you, and you could tell them what you want to grow, or bring those skills in-house. So at IGS, we offer full training for the team, and we would say for a farm of about 6 to 8 towers even, you would need 3 people maximum. So we can look at the height of the towers, what you're looking to grow. If you were looking to grow a variety of different crops at every different level, maybe you might need more people just to handle different harvesting and things. But if you were, we can really take a look into, okay, what do you need to grow, and then break down the number of employees that you would need. We tend to say have an operator who manages the software side, knows what's growing when it's going to be ready to harvested, and maybe 1 or 2 technicians who would be able to man the seeding lines and the harvesting lines and packaging and that. But it's definitely something that can be brought in-house, and yeah, we should talk about sort of what the gaps are, what things you'd like to grow, and if it's not something you would want to do with your own employees, then there's certainly people who I know are keen to be operators but maybe lack the capital or the access to the market that would be interested in us connecting you to them.
Okay, I mean, that's definitely something I'd like to take up. We have a market for this, and we have bigger customers who are absolutely interested in buying that product. I'm just be interested, what is the smallest viable scale to give it a try? Is a couple of towers enough? It may be something we have to go and talk about, but yeah, I'd really like to explore that.
Super, great. I'll make sure I get your details from Colin afterwards.
Yep, not a problem. And certainly you've got different models for different people for different sizes.
Yeah,
spoken about that ourselves. So yeah, it'd be great for Sam to understand more, and anyone else that's interested in that.
And we do take people through that whole, a grower model where we look at what crops you want to grow, what's the electricity prices, what's the labor rates, what's the wholesale market rate for those crops. So then you can come back with a real true ROI and see, what's the payback, what's the business model. IGS is very keen not to have projects that don't work. That's not what this new industry needs. We need great success stories, and that means that we work very closely with prospective customers to make sure that it's the right solution for them and that it's going to be financially viable as well as environmentally, and producing great produce as well at the same time.
Excellent.
Gina, just a quick one from me. With being quite into soft fruit over a certain amount of years, is there many soft fruit growers and I'd say tomato and pepper growers getting on board?
So we have had some conversations definitely with the soft fruit growers in terms of providing runner plants and then doing trials to see how they do out in the greenhouses after that. We've actually been doing some trials on dwarf peppers, which is very interesting. So yeah, I think there's definitely growing interest, but it's always good to have connections made and things as well. So please do, if you know of anybody or if you want some more information, get in touch and we can continue. Definitely. And that's something I think with James Hutton can work quite closely with us in helping advise, with their expertise in soft fruits. So we kind of can tap into a lot more knowledge in that whole area.
Okay.
Yes, so an example of that is there's some stuff work done recently, not by us, I may add, where they've looked at dwarf tomato targeting on the strig, the vine market. So they produced the plants about that size.
Yeah.
Got that of a stem at the bottom, but the whole top was fruit.
Wow. So
what they've done is they've completely switched off the natural plan for the plant just to keep going. You know what tomato plants are like. They've really dwarfed it and knocked it. So by combining aspects of the genetics and the environment, the fruiting capacity was just astronomical. I can't understate how effective it was. It was huge. And that absolutely then fits into the vertical farming. So to kind of go back to the soft fruit bit, I chatted to the head of procurement at Kraft Heinz globally, and he said, if you can grow a dwarf raspberry, he says, you'll never grow outside again.
Yeah.
They'll do it. So if they can get a plant that's half meter, get it at that sweet spot so it's just going to continue fruiting all the time. You maybe need to, if you can get an everbearer raspberry, for example, you've got markets out there that will take it almost instantly. So it's quite an exciting time for the technology and the crop side as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Just because Julie, and then John.
Yeah, sorry. So I am a wholesaler with very little space, so I will buy from Sam if he takes the tunnels on. But my question was actually, it really was just for my own interest. You said that the rain is irrigation. So this system seems to me sort of like a sort of epistemological leap in farming. Something that it would solve so many food problems around the world. What would you use for rain? What would you use for irrigation when there isn't very much rain?
Yeah, sorry, I probably didn't explain that so well in the presentation. So you would have your water tank, which could be rainwater, and that's harvested, and then that is treated. It's UV treated, filtered, nutrients are added, and then it goes around the system in a closed loop. And you would then, if you had more rainwater, you could refresh it probably after 6 months or top it up. So it's every 6 months you need the system to be flushed. So if you didn't have rain, you would just use mains water that is then, but you're able to continue using it, and the only water that leaves the system is that within the plant. Any water that's in the air, in the atmosphere, within the growth tower, it's brought in through the HVAC system, and the water is condensed and put back in. So it's very water efficient, but it's not, it is a closed loop system. So it's not every time that it rains, we're irrigating. It's more of a, it's capturing that water.
And just, sorry, I was really interested in what Derek said about, I know that we produce a huge amount of environmentally friendly electricity. Is it the cost that prohibits more people from doing this? Is it and yet we're still coupled with natural gas. So I know there would have to be lots of moves there, but is it the cost of this system that prevent, because I cannot see why Britain would not be adopting this in a wholesale scale.
Maybe jump in. It's fear of the new. It's as simple as that. I mean, if you look at nobody wants to jump into a technology and buy the Betamax version, and there might be a VHS turns up. So I think that there are people that will innately take innovation, and they will win, frankly. So first adopters, beachhead markets types of thing, and particularly the ones that Gina can probably discuss, and the bigger ones that they're going to be rolling out, they're going to win this game. And what you'll see is then a tail will suddenly rush up at the back of it, I think. But it's interesting that it's a system developed where you monitor everything. So when it comes back to reporting sustainability metrics or actually keeping your energy down to the smallest bit, you've got everything at your fingertips to actually play around with everything to do that.
I think that I would definitely say it is the newness of the market and just the number of factors that is why sometimes it takes people a while to do it, because they need a site to get planning permission, they need to raise capital and then have access to energy and then have these supply agreements. So it's almost just trying to get all of those things together. But definitely the message is that we have a lot of people that are building our vertical farms globally around the world, and we're expecting this time next year to have about 150 growth towers in operation. So it is ramping up. It's maybe just, it's still a part of the food chain, and we still definitely see there being a lot more opportunity where we can supply our technology in especially in these wholesale situations.
John Molyneux.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Thanks very much. I popped along to the thing at COP26, so I kind of seen some preparation. It's actually, so as well as working for Fair Share, I do have another hat. I'm a councillor in Glasgow, so, and I guess I was interested. Does the kind of either the scale or the financials mean that it only really works on a commercial basis, or do you have examples where there's public authorities actually leading on it? Because actually, I was wondering, in terms of like a local authority or an NHS trust or someone kind of, almost kind of providing their own supply chain. And, with my Glasgow hat, I was thinking, well, we don't have a shortage of vacant land. We don't have a shortage of ability to access waste heat, potentially to put in our own renewable energy solutions as well. So yeah, I guess I'm just curious about, are there examples of public authorities who are looking at it seriously?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an area that my colleague Sandy Kennedy is really active in, working on the whole liaising with Scottish governments and councils and identifying, pulling together the different partners, because as I said previously, there's a lot to setting up a vertical farm. You do need to have people that are going to work on it, off-takers, but it's also ticks a lot of the socioeconomic benefits, the ability to provide nutrition nearby, it's jobs, it's skills, and it's also, the environmental benefits as well. So there's a lot of areas that it really taps into. That means that a lot of councils are looking into it and seeing this being something, particularly I think it has real strength when we're looking at public sector procurement, you know, being able to supply hospitals and all of the public and schools even, you know, with this nutritious food, and having, you know, food as medicine rather than it just being segregated. So I definitely think there's a whole area there, and it'd be great to connect you to Sandy if you've not met him at COP26, because he's very keen to engage further with Glasgow as well on a number of those areas.
Well, we're maybe kind of progressing that in Orkney, where a community vertical farm will go in there as part of their regional development deal. And that kind of opens up different models, because the vertical farm, I mean, it doesn't become an open thing, because if it's an open farm, disease gets in and it will be trashed. So you kind of need a gatekeeper there. But the vertical farm, particularly the IGS one, becomes like an Airbnb, or you treat the farm as a hotel, and you will rent out one of these grow trays as you would a room in a hotel for a set period. So when you get your head around that, it suddenly becomes very different in terms of producing food, and that itself can then develop different business models that can be equitable because you want to deliver to the community.
Yeah. Excellent. Just conscious of time because we do need to get going. But John, did you have a question there?
Yeah, it was more the techie ones for Gina. You mentioned on the process of the photosynthesis that you're using LEDs for natural light, but you're pumping in CO2. Is that natural CO2 or is that produced or man-made?
I believe it's man-made.
Yeah, so you bind it in by
canisters. Yeah, and it can be linked with other industries that are producing CO2 if you combine it in with, you know, AD plants or other sorts of technology. But you would need to have it scrubbed clean for crop if you're growing crops for food.
That kind of answers the second question, yeah, because I was going to say, because there is a facility for basically extracting it from the natural air and processing it yourself. Is that something you're looking at long term?
I don't think so, but let me check with my colleagues and see, maybe I can come back to you and see if that's something that they're...
That's probably going to get delivered on as part of the Falkirk deal, John, because there's a large CO2 abstraction plant theoretically getting built there. And we're chatting to them to see what do you want to do with the CO2. So it could be one of the things they were really interested in was, to be brutally honest, a cheap and fast win. And it's actually feed plants. Because you can take the CO2 and then convert it to methanol, ethanol, and then larger chemicals. They'll do that. But for cheap, really clean CO2, put it next to a brewery or a distillery, because they ferment. You don't need to scrub that CO2. It comes out absolutely clean.
Yeah.
And so I'm certainly chatting to a few small breweries on the West Coast for very small versions of vertical farms that they want to do that because they've got excess heat and CO2. If you can scrub it, you put it next to a hospital, and the development of the next large hospital in Dundee, well, we're already chatting to them about, put a vertical farm next to it.
It makes sense.
I see that doesn't help you guys, to be brutally honest.
No. Bringing all the commercial
unless you're carrying the stuff on a tree like that.
Well, it can go straight into the hospital for the catering.
Yeah, but it kind of cuts the wholesalers out a wee bit there.
True. Sorry.
Second question, Gina, was soil used. I take it it's peat free, and what is it so strong?
So we use a number of different substrates for the Crop Research Centre, just depending on what customers want. So that could be coconut coir or rock wool or jute. Because we're not growers, it's very much dependent on what customers want, and that will largely be dictated by what the end user wants. So we're seeing, you know, people growing herbs, like living herbs and things that want them in a certain format. It's all in a pot, just growing like that when it's a customer use. So really at the CRC, we do the trials. We don't have peat or anything in our system. We just don't see that as being economically friendly and viable. But I know that there's other people within vertical farming industry who are growing in soil, and it allows them to do the whole organic produce. So that's probably a whole other conference webinar about organic produce and vertical farming. But yeah, you can grow in, you know, a variety of different substrates, and it's just trialing and testing and getting the growth recipe right in that substrate and format.
One last one. if I'm right in understanding this, if this took off long term, are the days of seasonal produce almost gone?
The days of seasonal strawberry?
Seasonal produce, so yeah, so where you go to a restaurant, you're eating what's in season. Is that potentially out the window now on a long-term basis?
I mean, I think there will always be a produce grown in the field and vertical farming hopefully complementing that. I think with some root vegetables and things, we're probably not quite there yet in terms of vertical farming being the answer. So I think it will play a part, but I don't think it will be that everything will always be grown in vertical farms. So I think you'll still have seasonal produce.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Gina and Derek. If we do have time at the end, we'll open up the floor to ask more questions. Certainly plenty of discussion there, but I'd now like to bring in Carl, who will talk about FruPro, and then John on FareShare. So Carl, if you want to come in.
No problem at all. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah, that's all good.
Brilliant. Thanks, Gina and Derek. That was a real great presentation on what you just done then. Absolutely brilliant. It's the first time I've done a presentation in years. All the guys are out at Fruit Attraction at the moment, and I'm back in the UK. So I wanted to come on here today, speak to you all, and talk about FruPro. So my name's Carl. I work for FruPro, which is just talk to you about our story and how it all started. So our founders have a heritage of 130 years in the fresh produce industry, combined with technical and operational skills. FruPro was started to provide an online solution to the problems in the fresh produce sector. The industry is shown slow to adapt to new technologies, and FruPro will enable the next 5 generations to flourish. The marketplace, FruPro, is built to optimize all aspects of the fresh produce supply chain, whether you're a farmer, fresh produce importer, fruit and veg wholesaler, or fresh produce retailer. FruPro will help you connect, distribute, operate, and trade and grow. FruPro was set up by 3 guys which have a wealth of knowledge in the industry. Will Hill, some of you guys in the wholesale industry might know him. He comes from the background of W.T. Hill's Western, 130-year-old premium fruit wholesale in the Western international market in London. He also started up W.T. Hill Imports, which has been a huge success, creating brands representing growers from Europe, around the world, such as Friesen de Palos and SWA Produce in England. Ollie has a core of operations experience, previous working as a management consultant in financial and logistics retail. And Cov, he's the techie guy behind the whole platform for the website and for the app. So just going to go on to this now. So the industry, the fresh produce industry has a high degree of fragmentation and lack of digitalization, which results in lack of transparency and efficiency. So you have you guys and these 4 or 5 different things down here, which seems to be lost in translation sometimes. So you had fragmented communication tools, lack of new connections, manual processes, time loss, limited information and visibility, and of course food waste and loss of dumping costs. So our solution, FruPro site, a centralized digital platform tailored to the fresh produce industry, help you to expand your network and boost your revenue. So the 4 main factors: communicate and connect better, market and distribute better, operate better, and trade better. We've already got, over the last 6 months, 87 different companies involved and onboarded, from your wholesalers, your importers, exporters, and retailers. So these are just some of them here. A number of different growers, wholesalers, and many other things. I just want to show you a quick video of how FruPro works, if I can get it to work. It's not working. It's not working, guys. I don't know why. So what I'll do, I'll send this on to Colin and get him to send it on to you afterwards. Since we've launched the platform, achieved over 2.1 million GMV traded through the platform in 6 months. We've distributed 206,439 boxes of fresh produce. As I said before, we've onboarded 87 companies on the platform with a total number of 2,464 product listings of many different things. And we fed 80,000 meals that would have otherwise gone to landfill through Fair Share and other different charities. I just want to show you the benefits. So there's the FruPro benefits for growers, importers and wholesalers. I'll just quickly run through the wholesaling side of things. So you buy and sell on a single platform, optimize your operations through buying and selling on a single platform, automate the order process digitally rather than using phone, voicemail, WhatsApp and fax. There's still a number of people that are using WhatsApp and fax daily. You can create your own digital store, create a digital and online store for your products to meet customer needs and increase sales. So you put all the details in there, like what you're selling, the weight, the count, the amount of different boxes you put on a pallet, that's on there. Increase your reach and find new existing exciting opportunities with other buyers and suppliers on the platform. So you have daily communication with all different users on the platform with a messaging service and stuff like that. Reduce the risk of bad debt. Fresh produce are open to financial risk because of the high volume trading. Reduce the risk by bad debt by digitally knowing your customer and utilizing the rating system that we have on the platform. And trade efficiently and reduce your commercial risk with real-time data, pricing, availability, and ratings. You communicating instantly. Are you done with worry to receive fresh produce that you order, in fact, not fulfilled? Utilize FruPro's trusted network and communicate any issues quality through live photos. So you diversity and growing your network as a company on the platform. The platform gives you uses to account managers to say if you are wanting some fruit or you want to get rid of some fruit, you can either do it yourself on there or you have a designated account manager to do so. So that's just one of the things that do. There are two different plans that you can have. You can have a regular plan or an advanced plan. Just quickly run through these for you, what the regular plan entails. You can connect with a large network, cut food waste, optimize business operations, get marketing advice to boost your income, tailored social media promotions, so like a live feed, like LinkedIn. You would have your own different things of your own profile that we'd put on there for you. Customer support on the regular plan. And then the advanced plan, tailored services and matchmaking support from industry experts, dedicated customer support advisor, strategy, marketing guidance, exclusive connections to other brands, logistic and networking services. Like I said, you'll be able to have your own LinkedIn where you put everything on, but there's also the logistical companies on there as well. To say if you had a problem in getting somewhere to A to B, we would put you in contact and help you with the logistical sides of things. Import and export consultancy. Now, for me, the lack of fresh produce. There's a lot of fruit and veg coming into the country. There's not enough going out of the country. So the platform allows you to speak to retailers, wholesalers, or importers or exporters, so they can move through out of there as well, and then tailor promotions for your brand. So yeah, that's all about FruPro. I'm sorry it's a quick presentation. I know I've been a little bit fast and stuff, but yeah, that's all about FruPro.
Thanks, Carl. I guess it's a shame that the film didn't work, or the video, and that would have given a better.
I know I can't get that to work for some reason, but what I'll do, I'll get it sent round to you so you can have a look at it. Don't know why it's not working, to be fair.
No, that's fine, and certainly I know that the initial concept was generated through.
Actually, Carl, I think
there you go.
I'll just see if this one works on here now. So this is it. Sorry, it's now working.
My entire life. My family has been part of this community for 5 generations, and I'm now working on a new project I'd like to tell you a little bit more about. FruitPro. FruitPro is the online fresh produce marketplace, bringing the entire supply chain online 24/7. We are connecting the entire industry. With a few clicks, sellers can post your produce onto our feed. Buyers can then search with a wide range of filters, negotiate on our best post system, and send specific offers with agreed terms. This allows us to offer secure transactions through our platform. FruitPro will allow you to run your business through one platform to manage your financial risk by understanding your customers better. This is built for the industry, by the industry, respecting traditions, and is guided by our industry board. FruitPro will enable the next generation of the industry to flourish using the latest technologies and innovations. Join our platform now and be part of the future of the industry.
There you go. Sorry it didn't work at first. I don't know why.
That's great, Carl. And certainly you're part of the solution and linking the growers to the buyers, and also, you know, in terms of not just the distribution of the fresh product, the product that's maybe been overbought, or the product that's going out of date or coming to its end of its life, to get it shifted and getting it distributed quickly. But what we'll do, again, we'll come back to any other questions at the end, but I'll ask John Molyneux from FareShare now to come in and share his presentation. That's great, John. Yep. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. I know. Sorry. I do like being back in the real world, so you don't have that faux pas to commit anymore. But anyway, so next time we'll do it in person, and I can't have to unmute. So yeah, look, thank you for inviting me. I'm John Molyneux. I work with FareShare in Scotland. FareShare is the largest charity in the UK, which is committed to fighting food waste, and I'll explain a little bit this morning about how we work and what some of the opportunities are for wholesalers. But yeah, first I wanted to, I guess I'll start on the wider context as well. And I think very much like Derek mentioned with his word cloud, I just don't think we talk about food and climate and the connections between them anywhere near enough. We were at COP26 last year. Food just wasn't, over a 2-week program addressed to issues around the climate, food security and food sustainability weren't even on the formal agenda. So I think there's so much more we can do, and why events like this and others are so important. And this map basically shows that if we don't act in line with the Paris climate commitments, we're going to see the vast majority of the world's population in acute food security by 2080. So the threat of climate change to our planet's ability to feed people is very real. And I often think about the change within one generation. So my own background, I grew up in a bakery, in a convenience store, and well, a kind of village one-stop did everything store in a small village in Cumbria. But I grew up, I guess I was a little bit exposed to the food supply chain there, but I never really questioned it. But my own children, who are age 7 and age 9, are have lived in that short time. They've lived through the pandemic, they've lived through Brexit, they've lived through the situation in Ukraine. They understand the existence of food banks. They're seeing the effects of the climate crisis in the floods in Pakistan and other issues. So there's a generation growing up now, I think, who are very exposed to very real concerns about food security. And yeah, I guess I think fundamentally we're coming at this from an environmental and a social point of view, but I do also think there's a moral obligation at the heart of this to make sure that we're ensuring that children all around the world grow up in a more secure and stable environment, and that's what everybody should be aspiring to. And I think FareShare plays a very small part in that, but I'm proud of the bit that we do. So yeah, I guess some of the facts as we see them. On the waste side, so we all know a third of all the food that's grown around the world is not eaten. It would take a land area the size of China to grow the food that's thrown away, but at the same time, we have inflation at a 30-year high, and we have 6.7 million people within the UK in food insecurity, including 2 million children. Also within the UK, 2 million tonnes of good to eat food, so the surplus food that we're trying to access, is perfectly good to eat, is currently wasted. That's enough to make 1.3 billion meals. We have a United Nations Sustainable Development target to halve food waste. That's very much likely to be matched in Scotland through the Good Food Nation plans that are coming forward. And food waste isn't just not just a cost for the food industry, but it also doesn't make sense when we know the big picture issues I've just talked about in terms of climate and hunger. And when there's solutions like Fair Share and others out there which could make a difference tomorrow, you know, what we do isn't reliant on new technology. It isn't part of the hydrogen economy. It's none of that sort of stuff. We can do this now. This is something that anybody, any company or producer who's generating food waste can do things right now to make sure that that gets to people who need it and tackle emissions that way as well. So as I mentioned, Fair Share is the UK's largest charity, which is fighting food waste. You know, we work right across the food industry, and we take good to eat surplus food. So it's expressly not waste. It is, when the point it gets to us, it's food that's good to eat. There's lots of reasons why food might arise as surplus. It could be, you know, issues in goods in. There could be damages. It could be packaging errors. Obviously issues with seasonal lines and seasonal variation, retailer returns, or short-dated stock. So there's a whole range of reasons, and even with the best, I guess the best intentions about organisations doing what they can to reduce food waste, which is absolutely the right thing to do, there's always likely to be a level of surplus that arises throughout the supply chain, and Fair Share is there to make sure that that surplus, when it does arise, gets to people who need it. So we work with a network of around 10,000 charities across the UK, about 600 in Scotland at the current count. And we are unique because we have that national scale, but we are also genuinely a hyper-local organisation. So in Scotland, we have currently four regional warehouses. We've got one in Glasgow, one in Edinburgh, Aberdeen and Dundee. We will be opening a kind of satellite warehouse just outside Inverness in the coming months as well. And each of those is operated by another independent charity that's rooted within that region and that community. So the model that we have allows us to have that national scale, but also to have a level of local delivery that's really well aligned to the needs of local communities and you know, the different makeup of charities and community groups across Scotland. And we take food in all types, in all quantities, right across the supply chain, as I said, from farms, from packers, retailers, manufacturers, wholesalers, and the food to go hospitality sector as well. I guess one of our, as well as the kind of scale issue, our other real USP is that food safety and brand reputation are absolutely critical to what we do. So any food that comes to us is logged right the way through the system. We've got a full end-to-end auditable supply chain. So we've got full traceability, but that also means we can measure, from a CSR point of view, we can measure in real detail the social value and the environmental benefits that are generated from people who give their food to us, whether that's, and we can calculate that in both CO2 and water savings. We have, you know, we've got really strong data, I guess, on what the impact of what we're doing, right down to a very, very local level. We've got two distinct arms, I guess, to what we do. The largest and the first is our regional warehouse, our network, the four warehouses that I mentioned in Scotland, and they will deal with, I guess they will generally deal with food surplus that's arising higher up the supply chain, from distribution centres and wholesalers up, larger volumes, things that are rising surplus further up in the supply chain, not just short-dated things, and they'll, you know, they're a busy warehouse environment, so they're staffed by staff and volunteers. working to break down and categorize food that comes in and match it up with the needs of the local charities and community groups that they're serving. The nature of the groups that we support is very varied, it should be noted. So we, people obviously think about food banks and pantries and organisations at a community level that are directly providing food to people, but actually our food's going into lots of other environments as well, into residential settings like the women's refuge or homeless shelter, into kind of informal care provision like an after school club or a breakfast club, or into community organisations who are making meals as a means of bringing people together and tackling social isolation. So there's a huge range of activities that can benefit and do benefit from the food that we supply. And I guess our mission is twofold. So we have that that principle that no good food should go to waste. So it's an environmental driver first and foremost, but we also want to make sure that what makes us different is that we maximize the social value that can be achieved with the food that we redistribute. And we're always trying to work with charities and community organizations to understand how we can help them to do more and increase the social value of what they do. We also have an app which is called FareShare Go, and that's really the part of FareShare's operation that deals with the short-dated back of store waste, essentially. So, and that we work with hundreds of organisations through that means as well. And it's the FareShare as the organisation doesn't really have a direct role in terms of a middleman there. It's directly matching up a retailer or some wholesalers, Booker, use FareShare Go for some of their activity, but on a retail point of view, we work with every Tesco outlet throughout the UK, whether that's large or small format stores. But it's just a direct matchmaking service. So it's if somebody has surplus food that's ready to go, they upload it and it'll be matched to charities who will come and be able to pick it up from their local store. So it's it's a more direct provision than the sort of logistics that are involved with the warehouse type operation of what we do. As I mentioned, the charities we work with use our food for a huge range of issues, and the majority of those organisations I talked about that are our mission to maximise social value. So most of these organisations aren't just providing food. That food is the main thing that they do, or it's the glue that brings people together. But the vast majority of them also provide wider support, so wraparound provision to people in different needs, whether there's people facing unemployment or low incomes, debt, homelessness, social isolation, family breakup, all those sorts of things. So we work very much with the network of charities and community groups who are dedicated to tackling all those issues. And around 2/3 of the people who access our food are children and families. So in the cost of living crisis that we're facing now, we're assured that our food is able to meet the real needs that people are facing in our communities. We work, as I mentioned, with a huge number of organisations. I think it is fair to say that we are trusted by the UK's major food industry brands. That is because of that certification, that audit that we can provide, as well as the social value and the benefit that we can report back to them for the CSR objectives. We have direct authorisations from many manufacturers to supply own brand products direct to FareShare, which is something that's quite unique to FareShare as well, because we've got the assurances about traceability, etc. And we're always working to make ourselves easier, or wanting to make ourselves easier to work with for the industry, and that's something we're always wanting to listen and understand. What can we do that makes our operations easier? So we're doing, at the moment, we're trialing weekend opening, which we've not done previously in Scotland. So our Glasgow warehouse is now opening on Saturdays. So we can take in food that doesn't just apply, make us able to take in food on Saturdays. We can also open on, we wouldn't previously take a lot of food on Fridays because we would sit in our warehouses over the weekend and not move on. So it means we can take more things, more supply in on Fridays as well. We've also just in the last few weeks introduced a new policy on best before, which is aligning with the RAP guidance published a couple of years ago now. So previously we would have required specific extension notes for everything that was beyond its best before date, but we've now implemented a kind of default extension process for most things. Some producers have opted out of that. So for some manufacturers, we still are offering a kind of case-by-case extension note policy. But again, that general relaxation of the administrative requirement, I think, is something that we're doing to try and make ourselves easier to work with. But like I say, we want to understand from retailers, wholesalers, manufacturers what it is that we can do to overcome any barriers that you might have to sending us your surplus food. One of the things we've got to do that specifically in Scotland as well, which is probably my big sales pitch right now, is some money. So we have funding for a program that we do operate UCAN. We've had it's essentially a fund that has sometimes been supported by governments, other times by retailers and manufacturers and by others. And effectively, the purpose of this fund is to make it cost neutral for anyone to get good food to us. And I guess this came about because particularly when we're wanting to get food from higher up the supply chain, from growers, etc. There's obviously a cost of getting that food to people so they can eat it. And even though we know the benefit of that in environmental terms, it's 17 times better to get food to people to eat rather than the next best thing, which would be sending it for animal feed. We know that getting it to us incurs additional costs, because for us to be able to use that, we often need to break it down, transportation costs, packing costs, all those sorts of things. So this fund is there to effectively make it cost neutral. So if you, might previously be sending surplus to animal feed or to anaerobic digestion, or if it's a grower, if it would have been ploughed back in, we will be able to match that effectively. We'll provide the funding directly to food businesses, so you can get that food to us. So you know that you're doing the best possible thing, both for the environment and for our communities with that food. And yeah, we have some funding this financial year from Scottish Government, which is specifically for use in Scotland. They are really keen. We ran that. We had funding from government last year, and we unlocked 1,000 tonnes of surplus with that, which is around 2.5 million meals that we delivered in Scotland thanks to this funding last year. It was pretty much all used at the growers' end, so dealing with wonky veg, I guess, stuff that wasn't meeting retailer specifications. Scottish Government are really keen that we innovate and we try and look for other opportunities throughout the supply chain, and we've had a good dialogue previously with Colin and team about how we might be able to use that with wholesalers, because some of the issues, the formats, the catering volumes, etc., that wholesalers might deal with would in normal times be quite problematic for the smaller charities who want to use them. But we could use this fund either potentially for product reformulation, so turning catering packs of mushrooms into mushroom soup or something, or we could use it to break down and repack into formats that are more suitable for charities and community groups. So I think there's a lot of potential with this with this fund in the next 12 months to try and innovate and do some things that can, right now, particularly with the cost of living issues that our communities are facing, make a real difference right across Scotland. So that's my big ask today. If anyone, if you can think and see opportunities within your own operations where we might be able to unlock those kinds of opportunities, please get in touch, and yeah, we're open to try and work through any issues that we might have and overcome those barriers. So that's just a wee bit more on the fund, and yeah, that's me. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, John. You know, surplus for purpose is certainly very, very welcome. I know it doesn't cover all the costs of our purchase costs of the goods that we're still taking, or the wholesaler in this instance is still taking a hit on, but at least it goes some way to recovering some of the cost of getting it to you and getting it to the charities where we can. So just conscious of time, I'd like to just open it to the floor for any questions of Carl and John, and Ylva, you're straight in there. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant presentations. Really interesting to hear. I had a question for Carl, and then also a kind of, I suppose, invitation to John. But first of all, Carl, it's great to see that you're working together with Fair Share there, and kind of fielding good food going to people rather than to waste, and just kind of wondering how that would work briefly for users of the app, and you know, any kind of call to action around that. And John, in terms of that, I think, as was discussed, really keen to be working with you to sort of open up channels of any surplus food to you. In my experience to date, it's often to do with, and it'll be no surprise to you, very short-term solutions needed of very large quantities of food. That's been my experience to date. So it is a challenge, and I'm just kind of hoping that we can work together to find some solutions that will work for wholesalers in a practical way.
Carl, you want to come in first? And
yeah,
then
I'll come in first. Thanks for your question. So with all our users that are on the platform, we also many like the growers and the packers and whoever is on the platform, we try to also say to them, have you got any surplus fruit, for example, strawberries or punneted fruit, and donate it. So we're always trying to push that as much as we can. So all the people, all the companies that are on the platform are very focused, and as account management, we're always trying to push them towards John or to your local food banks and people like that. And I think it's absolutely essential, because there's so much food that goes to waste. It's unbelievable. After working in a pack house for only 13, 14 years of my life, where I started off and run a soft fruit pack house, there is an unbelievable amount of waste. But I think over the last 4 or 5 years, people have now, the companies or packers or wholesalers are coming away from that and are donating and sending more fruit towards like Fair Share, John, that way. And I think it's something, as from a Food Pro point of view, it's one of our main points that we want to do.
That's really good to hear. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just come back over. Yes, you know, getting lots of large volumes at short notice can throw up problems. You know, we do have some capacity, so for things, you know, we have blast freezers in Glasgow, so we can blast freeze food down, allows us to take food out of food service industry, etc. So we have that capacity, and we have the ability to move frozen through all of our warehouses. So that's one obvious thing. But yeah, we are very interested, as I said, in looking at how we might be able to do kind of product formulation. So there's not in Scotland, but one of our regional centres in Manchester is working on a project using a contract canner. So we will be looking at canning some surplus produce, fresh produce that comes in, and how we can get that out. So I think there's lots of potential for us to do a lot of this. I know we've had discussions with Lomond and some of your other members in the past. So yeah, I'm really keen that we do try and move things on and get some of this happening in Scotland in the next 12 months.
Great, thank you.
Excellent, thanks, John. Just, yeah, I think we're slightly over time. If anyone does have any other questions, if you want to put your hand up now. Okay. Oh,
John, just to say it's very welcome to hear that you're now taking products in on a Friday afternoon. It is a challenge we've had in the past. Friday tends to be the day when, for food service, because we don't deliver much on a Saturday and nothing on a Sunday, is when we tend to have more short-dated products. And quite often we've phoned up people like yourselves and other charitable organisations that say, oh, we're not open at the weekend. And I always thought, well, people must be hungry Saturday and Sunday, just like any other day. So that's been disappointing. So that's good to know. I know if the Glasgow depot is open.
Glasgow's trialling the trialling Saturday opening at the moment. Getting food in from one of the ASDA DCs on Fridays. So yeah, so it's a trial. It's not a permanent fixture yet, but we are trialing it now. So yeah, hopefully that allows you to get more to us.
I think we are giving it to other people at the moment. Our waste is down to 0.07%, and that's only damaged product. So I think everything is going to be eaten and used, but it's good to know that you're there to take anything that comes up. Great.
Excellent. That's great to hear, Sam. And I guess on that positive note of little going to waste, I'd like to thank everyone for not just joining us, but for our presenters today, for sharing the future of food growth and how we can prevent it going to waste. So I will now draw it to a close and wish you all a very good day. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. That was great.
Thank you.